Good afternoon, everybody. This is Marlin speaking with Vaion, and just wanted to welcome you and everybody to our webinar today on the impact of embedded artificial intelligence to surveillance. We have a host of folks with us on the line today, both from Vaion as well as NSCA. And of course, I have a co-presenter with me, who is our CEO, Tormod, who will focus specifically in today's dialogue around the impact of artificial intelligence within our environment in general, as well as its applicability to video surveillance. And then myself, who's running our commercial operations here in the North American marketplace. From the NSCA team, Mike, anything that you wanted to add or contribute before we just proceeded forward, some ground rules, etc.?
Yeah, hello, Adam, and thank you for the introduction and everything. Looking forward to this. We do have some housekeeping items here as part of our webinar series, which is we're excited to have Vaion part of this month, and our webinar series of whatever integrator needs to know. And a couple of things. All participants are on mute. We do encourage you to ask questions by submitting them via the chat box during the presentation from Adam and Tormod here. We'll also have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. Another note is the webinar is being recorded. You will have an opportunity to download and listen to the archived version of this webinar at any time by visiting nsca.org/webinars, and then I believe Vaion will be posting it on their social media sites and website as well. So with that said, and Adam and Tormod, we look forward learning and hearing your insight on the industry trends and so forth that impacts embedded artificial intelligence on surveillance and the opportunities that provides integrators as they look to transform their business to more services and so forth. So with that said, Adam, as you mentioned, you're leading the commercial side of things here in the U.S. and go-to-market effort for Vaion, and Tormod, you are the CEO of Vaion, but previously a senior director and general manager of the Spark Device Experiences side of Cisco. So welcome, gentlemen, and with all that said, we look forward to learning more, and we'll hand it off to you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and before I hand it off to Tormod, just a quick reminder on Vaion. We did launch our company publicly at the IFSEC conference in the UK, June 18th. So lots more information pending from us, and you'll see us participate in a number of these types of events and webinars. Our next large participatory event, and from a conference standpoint, will be at GSX in Chicago, September, 8th to 12th. So we look forward to seeing some or all of you there. And with that, Tormod, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Adam, and it's a pleasure to be with you all here today, and I look forward to going through this webinar together with you. And as Adam said, I'll start by providing, sort of an AI 101 to speak a bit more about what AI and artificial intelligence is, to demystify some of the terms, and also speak more generally about the impact that it will have on the world in general, before we together transition to talking about surveillance more specifically. And speaking about artificial intelligence in general, I'd like to start by this with this quote from Fei Li. So she is a professor of computer science at Stanford University, and she's also the co-director of the Stanford Human-Centered AI Institute. And she says that if our era is the next industrial revolution, as many claim, AI is surely one of its driving forces. And I think the key thing to pull out from this is that AI is likely to be a driver and enabler for very substantial changes across all industries, just like the Industrial Revolution was, and just like technologies like electricity was and still is. So I think that says something about the magnitude of change that's starting to come into play right now. So I think if we then move to the next slide, thank you, Adam. This is not something that just is written about in books or just something that people talk about. It is already transforming industries around us, and some of them are kind of apparent, and people talk about artificial intelligence and how it's used, and some of it's perhaps more subtle. But a few good examples are automotive, where in order to have top marks in the collision tests these days, cars need to have pedestrian detection systems and automatic braking installed. And I think something like this requires, of course, a lot of different technology, including AI and next generation AI, which I'll speak a bit more to shortly what exactly that is. Cybersecurity is another good example where there are solutions from vendors that comb through a large amount of data, user actions and network traffic and look for specific events or try to identify suspicious behavior. And retail is another good example where algorithms are being used to predict the need for a particular product, to understand what customers are looking for, or to provide real-time digital assistance. And this is just a sort of a short list of examples. The list is longer, and I think how and when AI will impact these different industries differs, of course, but the impact is going to be substantial in all cases. So if we then move to the next slide, please, Adam. There's a few, I'll try to do it sort of a quick demystification and clarify some of the terms as well before we move on. And there's a lot more literature about this online if you're interested in the details. But in general, there are a few terms that are used a bit interchangeably, perhaps, when talking about AI. And they are artificial intelligence, ML, or machine learning, and deep learning. And the sort of a high-level story on that is that AI is a set of technologies that allow machines to simulate human-like intelligence. So almost anything, if you may, that tries to make a machine behave a bit more, be more intelligent and behave more like a human. So this is a very broad term that can be used for a lot of different things. And then you have machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. It's a technique to train algorithms to learn and make decisions. So the difference here from sort of regular programming is that you no longer tell the program or program the algorithm for exactly what it's supposed to look for. So if it's looking for something in a picture, you don't tell it to look for a person by telling it that the person looks exactly like this. You train it on a larger data set, and then itself it learns how to, or what a human or a car or another object might look like in the case of object detection and recognition. And then a subset of that again is deep learning, which is a technique of training these machine learning algorithms to identify patterns and classify data, where you try to mimic a human brain and the structure of a human brain when you do the machine learning. So what you do is you create these things called neural networks, and then they resemble the human brain and how the human brain works. And then you train them to, for instance, recognize patterns and classify data. And I think when we're going to now dive a bit more into to the impact of AI to surveillance, most of this, if not all of this, next generation artificial intelligence is both machine learning and deep learning based. So with that, let's move on to talk about artificial intelligence in surveillance and share some thoughts about how we think this will play out here, why it's relevant, and what vendors and integrators to think about to deploy this successfully. And I'll start with a quick story here. I think it dawned on me quite early in the process of starting Vaion that video surveillance in particular is an area where the next generation artificial intelligence can be applied effectively. And one of those sort of points of realization was a conversation that we had, or I had quite early on, with a CIO of a school district in Alaska. And he told me a story about how somebody had set fire to one of their school buildings in the middle of the night. And the way that they'd learned about the fire was by one of the neighbors calling them and alerting them to the fact that the building was on fire. And then after the fire and after the fact, they went back and looked at their surveillance data, and they found that they had one camera pointed at the individual starting the fire for 15 minutes in the middle of the night before he actually succeeded in starting the fire. And that's a perfect example of one of the main problems in video surveillance today, where operators face an overwhelming amount of video, tens, hundreds, thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of camera feeds, but they don't have any meaningful insights. So it makes it impossible for them to monitor feeds and proactively respond to incidents. They're forced to be reactive because it's not humanly possible to scan through all of this data. And it's also incredibly time consuming to look through video. Forensic investigations can involve manual review of hundreds or thousands of hours of video, and they're quite prone to error. And the use case like this, where you have a large amount of data, in this case video, that you need to transform into insight, where you need to do things like, say, understand what these cameras actually see, where you need to understand what type of objects you have present, if there are certain events going on, like loitering or crowd gathering, or if you have unusual activity, is a very good use case for the next generation artificial intelligence. And I think this is not a new realization, of course, and people have been trying to go about solving this problem before, and they've been trying to solve it with something called video analytics, which has been around for a number of years. And if you can transition to the next slide then, Adam, please. It began with something called video analytics, which was not AI in the sense that we're talking about it today, but hard-coded algorithms looking for pixel changes or specific patterns and outputting simple alerts that did object classification based on geometric parameters. So a car has this size and this shape and looks like this, or a person looks like this, and that had very specific requirements and manual configuration, sort of requirements to camera positioning, focal length, lighting, etc. And the problem then is, if you go to the next slide, please, Adam. The problem then is that there's a number of issues, and that are quite significant, and I think led to a lot of disappointed both integrators and customers. You had a lot of false alarms because the way that you looked for objects or events was so crudely looking for pixel changes. You sort of moved from having video fatigue and too much video to having too many alerts, and you got alert fatigue instead. Problem number two is you didn't really have scale, so you deployed this very selectively to a few cameras or a few locations, so you didn't really effectively make your whole installation a lot smarter. Number three, the experiences that you got were very simple and crude alerts, so it didn't really allow for much richer or value-adding experiences. And number four, you picked the wrong use cases, so you had misaligned expectations and you had poor performance. And last but not least, you had technology incompatibility. People did this in a different way. They did it in a different way on the camera, on the VMS, or a different sort of as a third-party add-on. And it was incredibly hard to get these things to work well together. So the sum of it is, it didn't really work, and it's not the right way to go about making these solutions smarter. Now, however, it's time for a new approach. It's time to do embedded AI-driven analytics that's based on next-generation machine learning and deep learning. And the reason why the time is right is threefold. So first, now, for the first time, you have really high performance and well-suited IP cameras within reach. You have cameras that can provide the right image quality for analytics, and you have cameras that can have the compute power to do some of these analytics themselves. You have GPUs, either on the camera side or on the infrastructure side, that have the processing power to support the computationally intensive deep learning. And then third, deep learning has reached its developmental peak. You could argue at least a peak that allows it to make AI accuracy a reality and make it accurate enough to be deployed effectively. That said, however, it's not something that you can sort of blindly just go about throwing at your installation or your product. So we'd like to spend some time talking about what's actually needed to make this successful in surveillance. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Adam, to take us from here.
Thank you, Tormod, and appreciate the summary. I know for me, there's always a confusion between the banter around analytics and what is real artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how does that get applied differently to create, more unique, I guess, user experiences and operator experiences. And I think when we look at what's needed in AI in video surveillance in general, it's these 6 things that you see here at the bottom. I'll try not to read them literally. But one is, what is the contextual awareness of what's happening on the video screen. Everybody complains about video fatigue. We were at a client a couple of weeks ago that has 12,000 cameras, your typical SOC with 3 walls filled with 8 screens each screen with 16 video thumbnails rotating every 30 seconds. And it's just not possible for a human operator to really understand what's happening there. So AI has to deliver on that. And it's got to scale, as you inferenced earlier. It can't just be to a select camera. I think historically that's been the challenge because a camera couldn't handle it. The software was too expensive, right? I couldn't deliver the functionality in an affordable way, so I had to try to pick and choose. And then I had to try to kind of program everything, which didn't work. And everything has to be in real time. So this era of this post-processing world where, oh, well, yeah, I figured out what I wanted to figure out, but that was days, hours, weeks after I actually could have used it to affect something in real time and a proactive response. And forensics has to get a lot smarter, right? So one of the values, in my opinion, around what is needed for AI is I got to use it when I can't see something that's happening in real time because I have the 10,000 cameras or the 12,000 cameras and I know what I'm looking for. I got to find it fast, minutes, not hours and days. We were out at a client on the West Coast whose core issue was they had 3 or 4 incidents a week, and they were persistently and constantly in arrears in trying to address those issues because it took them several days to respond, and by the time they responded, more issues had happened, and it was just an ever-lasting cycle of, I'll call it pain. And then I think most importantly is, what does the next generation of experience look like, right? If I'm going to use AI effectively, I want to do something different. I just don't want to do the same old thing I've always done before. And then how do I pick the right use cases that are synchronous with the expectations that you highlighted earlier so that I can actually deliver some value that evolves as the technology evolves and not just have guesswork around, gee, wouldn't it be nice? Everybody always expects the iRobot experience where we have that seamless artificial intelligence walking near us. When you mentioned the automotive industry, the panacea in automotive is I want an autonomous vehicle and I want to have my lunch and I want to sit in the back seat. But the reality is that we're not there. But I can take huge incremental leapfrogs or steps in the right direction. And that's what we'll talk about here. So when we talk about the rich understanding of what's happening on screen and using AI effectively, we're using it to do a couple of things. One, obviously on the right-hand side, we want to identify objects and people in real time. I don't want to have to train it. I don't want to have to write rules. The system should be smart enough to nudge the operator in real time. We have a concept that we call dynamic view, and the idea there is use the intelligence of the system to present to the operator what we think is more interesting based on those objects, those events, those people, those timelines, right? And then failing that or not being able to identify something in real time to an operator by nudging them along, maybe you're going to move on to an anomaly. Hey, this is something unusual, as is highlighted here. Hey, somebody's going up the fire escape. Somebody's going at an odd time of day. It's a weird time of evening. They're going in the wrong direction. These are all things that artificial intelligence can identify in real time to affect a real difference. And when I create those alerts, how do I do that in an intelligent way so I don't have that fatigue that you talked about earlier, where, gee, I'm just going to turn it off because my phone is binging all the time with these events. And then when we talk about scale, right, it's got to be across all topologies, and it's got to be, let's call it retroactive or at least backwards compatible, right? I want to be able to look at, my environment with what I've already purchased, even if that's analog and I have to use a converter, or if that's digital, or if it's cameras from any kind of manufacturer that supports an ONVIF, type of compliance. I want to be able to leverage that in my experience. I have to scale it at a commercial level, meaning the software can't be too expensive. I got to scale it at a hardware level, meaning, hey, if I'm using, a server to drive this experience, I've got to scale the number of cameras I have per server so I don't just have an inundation of number of appliances in my environment. And they have to be resilient, and they have to be redundant, and they have to have an eye towards a cloud topology that allows me flexibility in my deployment model to say, hey, sometimes I want public cloud, sometimes I want hybrid cloud, sometimes I want an enterprise deployment, but that should be my choice. Oops, it double skipped. Sorry about that. And then when we talk about that concept of real time, how do I collect the data and analyze it quickly so that I can detect those anomalies and present it in the moment, so that an operator can make a decision. In the case that we always talk about, that arson, as you mentioned, wouldn't it have been nice if, hey, campus security got an alert that said, look, artificial intelligence is not this perfect thing. It's not going to know, hey, this person is committing arson, but it would know this is a weird time of day. This is a weird behavior. He's got a bunch of stuff with him. What is he doing over there for 15 or 20 minutes? Let's pass that alert over to campus security and have them go roll out and investigate. So the role of the human operator is not eliminated. That's not the goal of efficiency and ROI. It's to make them more effective. It's to make the time spent valuable for identifying the whole context of employing video surveillance to begin with, which is typically about how do I prevent something from happening? How do I prevent a threat from escalating into an incident? How do I avoid disgruntled employees? How do I avoid threat? That's really what people want out of surveillance. So I need to collect, analyze, and in this particular case, we're saying, hey, you know what? If I can embed audio analytics inside my camera, then I can identify things like screams for help or gunshots or glass breaking. I can pinpoint the area of activity. I can highlight that to an operator to take action. I can capture and record it, and I could do that in conjunction with analytics that show me the motion, the individuals, the people, the objects, the cars, and something that's very identifiable, searchable, digestible, and actionable. And that's really what we think we're all about, certainly at Vaion, but where the industry needs to head in general. And then we take that a step further and say, well, if I'm using all of this intelligence in real time and I can identify people and objects, then certainly I want to act in real time. But in those cases where I can't, right? Well, I want my searching to be a lot faster. I don't want to have to comb through camera by camera worth of data and recordings and try to search manually for people or objects. I want to be able to say, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a bicycle. I'm looking for a person. Something went missing. Let me find that quickly and then apply that similarity. Hey, I'm looking for this individual across all of these cameras. Let me build my case file, or let me even find something in real time. We were talking to a client who's a port, a ferry terminal, and one of the big issues that they have is, hey, you know what? People come on the ferry. If it happens to be a nice day, sometimes I'll take my bike. But you know what? I'm used to commuting on foot, and I forget my bike. Not a big deal, right? Well, unfortunately, the protocol is if the boat is empty and the bike is left behind and we don't know whose it is, then we're going to have a helicopter, we're going to have a boat, and we're going to have to assume that somebody fell overboard, when that's not normally the case, and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in false searches. Well, wouldn't it be nice to very quickly say, oh, there's a yellow bicycle. Let me do a quick similarity search on that bicycle, on that boat. I can identify the person. I click on that person. I search across all cameras, and now I can see this person exiting the building and say, yo, Mr. Man with the yellow long sleeve shirt and a blue top, do you mind going ahead and searching for your bicycle? Yeah, we think that maybe you left it behind. Right? Huge opportunity to act differently and to have a different ROI. And then, of course, there's the whole concept of how do we embed artificial intelligence to deliver this next generation experience? How do I apply things in this particular case to a real presence-based smart map that says, hey, you know what could I do with this? Could I take this information on occupancy and make my workforce productivity plans a little more effective, so that I know how many people are sitting in cubicles? Do I have too many people in my small conference room and too few people in my large conference room? Or as was the case with Cisco when I worked there, hey, people booked video conferencing rooms and didn't use them, and so they were sitting empty. And I can identify all of those things by having an integrated AI analytic. Or maybe I want to sit there and say, hey, you know what, can I grab some energy efficiency information based on occupancy and feed that back to a building management system so I can reduce my overhead for my heating and cooling? These are all different areas of opportunities to use that base platform in a wholly different way. And we'll talk through a few of those examples in a verticalized fashion here in a minute. So what we talked about, briefly was what is the impact of AI in general across the marketplace and across different technologies? How do we think that's important in the context of video surveillance? And then how can we apply it to the vertical markets that we all share? So we look at the educational environment. We say, hey, what's more important than safeguarding our students and our future leaders of America? Well, number one, let's prevent incidents from happening. We have Lunch Lady Betty, who might be looking at the operational context occasionally for a monitor, but most likely maybe it's the principal, or maybe somebody is just looking for a better sense of situational awareness with some alerts in real time so that I can make decisions, right? I want to be able to prevent issues around whether it's the worst case scenario with active shooter, fire safety, loitering. How can I use intelligence to say, hey, you know what? It's after 2:30 p.m. School is over. There shouldn't be a bunch of kids in the parking lot, right? Or fire safety, going back to that map that we showed you and said, hey, you know what? We have a fire drill. We have a fire marshal assigned that's supposed to clear the floor. How many students are still on the floor? How many people came in? How many people left? That's all information that we can use to make better decisions in real time, and we can act more effectively. Retail has been discussed for many, many years around how do we use better analytics and better information integrated with point of sale, right? So how could I get insights now with my actual footprint of my store, right? Where are these people going? How many people are in there? How do they interact with products? Well, how do they dwell by rounders or certain displays? What kind of notifications can I drive when there's long lines sitting at the cash register? How do I allocate my staff in the future and predictively based on my historical analysis of how many people are in the store? What stores are performing best and why? These are all the things that we can now do with AI, in addition to the legacy of, hey, I don't want people to loiter on the outside of my building. I need to be careful of false claims. I want to prevent shoplifting, employee transgressions, I'll call it, in terms of their behaviors or theft. Those are all things that now powerful analytics can deliver through the basis of machine learning. And then hopefully last but not least, we talk about keeping people, assets, and data safe. In the world of commercial and corporate real estate, the notifications are critical now to draw the attention from a multitude of feeds to an operator around what are the risks. Where are there secure doors or entrances? Where are there packages going missing? How do I prevent unauthorized access? I mean, we look at things like tailgating, which everyone is concerned about. Hey, I'm swiping my badge and I'm walking through, but how many people are following behind me? If there's one badge swipe and 3 people following behind me, then maybe I need to automatically send an alert to the security operator that includes a link with a video of what happened, past tense, as well as what's happening as I progress down the hallway. So those are all things that should be automated, should be simple, without a lot of programming, right? Without a lot of definition that says, hey, I can make this happen in an intelligent way. So our conjecture as we move forward in the marketplace is that video and AI and audio analytics are mainstream, and it is now possible to do the things that we always hoped. I need to examine that video with, I'll say, more accuracy, more speed than what is humanly possible, right? I need to reduce my search time to minutes, not days, not hours, not too late, but just like our example, I want to respond in real time and say, yep, I see exactly what happened. I can track those individuals. I can build that case file, but maybe I can even react to it in the moment, right? Let's start predicting and analyzing what threats are out there and prevent those from escalating into incidents. And then are there operational benefits that we can achieve outside of the historical domain of physical security, right? Can we achieve better energy efficiency? Can we get access to real-time energy management grants? In New York State, there's actually grants available that will pay for a Vaion system based on occupancy counts, right? Can we improve workplace productivity, retail analytics? There's so many more examples. In healthcare, we can sit there and track assets if we need to and say, hey, where are the gurneys? Where are the wheelchairs? Lots of people are wheeling patients to the outside and leaving these things all over the place. So how do we extract more value than just the day-to-day situational awareness? And then for our integrator community, certainly, from a Vaion perspective, we're going to market with our security integrators, but we're looking for value from those integrators, not in terms of just dollars and cents in your pockets, but how do you help your customers achieve their goals, right? Not just the security and situational awareness goals, but, hey, look, now if we're living in this environment where we can drive real intelligence, maybe we need better monitoring and managed services with people who are skilled at operating these environments and can create real-time alerts. So I don't have to have a SOC on site. That doesn't have to be my responsibility, right? Can I deliver a better ROI with AI embedded systems and frameworks that actually pay for themselves? In the case of the RTEM grant that I mentioned for New York State, you get up to 25% of your energy efficiency project refunded based on just implementing new systems, whether that's solar or high energy efficiency chillers or heating. If you add occupancy information provided by Vaion, you get another 25%. That's $1 million plus project. That's $250,000 to pay for a small upgrade in security. The rest can go into the owner's pocket. What a great ROI for that. There are integrations coming that are outside our traditional framework. When you ask, hey, what are the services, what are the opportunities that I have? Well, you think about building management systems, lighting and climate control, workplace productivity. There's so many different potential opportunities for us, even within the healthcare framework, to get involved and improve our skill sets. And of course, what we all hope to achieve is a seamless experience for our customers that makes surveillance not obvious in front of us and onerous, but rather something that provides value, is automated, and does not provide fatigue, either eye fatigue within the operational context or alert-based and event-trigger fatigue. So with that, we're happy to share a little bit about our own company. As I mentioned to you earlier, we are a bunch of folks who, as you heard from Tormod, who's based in Oslo, or we like to say we're headquartered somewhere in the North Sea. We do have our R&D facilities in Uxbridge, which is outside London, as well as in Oslo. We do make an end-to-end solution that is both camera-based for domes and panos, as well as an appliance and software base for a AI-embedded VMS experience. We are open in terms of ONVIS standard and compliance, so we are interoperable. We will be launching shortly in a general availability context. We're doing two things now that for those that are interested. One is we are deploying our proof of concepts for our customers and partners who are interested in testing our platform. And we're also enrolling a select few number of security integrators to help us go to market together. We certainly aim to not be over-distributed, to focus on those that want to change the industry with us and hopefully benefit from that activity. So as mentioned here, ultimate goal, provide the best platform with actionable intelligence for a very affordable price, all embedded within what you would expect to pay for a standard VMS platform. So our website is there. Obviously, you saw our information earlier. I'm adam.marlin@vaion.com and would love to speak with every last one of you who are interested at the appropriate time. With that, I'll turn it over, Mike, to you and to Q&A to see if we've had any questions come through the platform here, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect, Adam. We did have a few questions that did come in, but before we get to that, I want to add a couple of thoughts. I know I learned a few things here today, especially, AI versus video analytics, but also I want to bring up, you talked about events earlier, is that NSCA's Pivot to Profit event is coming up September 24th and 25th in Dallas. You guys are very much part of that as a toolkit sponsor, and will be there at the event sharing and really helping integrators better understand how they can take what we learned here today and the services that are part of and available through AI and AI for video surveillance, and how to take that and better serve their customers, right, with business outcomes, as you mentioned. And so we look forward to seeing you guys there in Dallas at the end of September.
Yeah, I'll mention that we'll also try to get to that golf tournament, and our wallets will be open because we're not very good.
Sounds good. We'll make sure we add that part of the marketing campaign for the golf outings. So, well, good. With that, Adam, and it kind of goes into what P2P is about and transforming your business as an integrator. Here's the question that came in. What skill set should an integrator be building and training for with these new services that are available out there?
Well, if Paul is on the line, Paul comes to us as one of our solution engineers. He comes from a partner, so I'd like him to answer that question if possible.
Yeah, I'm on, Adam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Okay. No, it's a great question. I'd like to actually speak to my background coming from the physical security space, and it started back as analog was migrating into the IP realm. And the skill sets that have emerged over the course of time, it starts with the physical security itself, the cameras and the software, and you have to have a core understanding of the hardware and software of the cameras, the VMS. There's various certifications that aid in making sure that you have the core comprehension of a camera solution that you're selling, a VMS solution that you're selling. But as over the course of time, as we emerged into the IT, there became a reliance on a basic comprehension of IT network as well. Now, not everybody is a network engineer. I don't profess to be one, but I did learn over the course of working through two integrators that basic network comprehension also became very important to being successful in today's modern physical security. Now, add on to that AI, and I think it creates a real interesting a concept or approach that I think is going to be a little bit different than just learning about a camera system or learning about network infrastructure. The complexities that come along with building an AI system, I think it's going to really embolden or entrench the partnership between the manufacturer of the product and the integration partners that they're working with. The reason for that is we're not code writers, and I don't think any of us are going to run out as integrators and get a degree in code writing of some sort. And support of these systems is Tormod mentioned, with the algorithms and the learning and all, that's very code intrinsic. So with that comes the opportunity to develop a more entrenched partnership that I don't think you've necessarily historically seen. Yeah, you may call a help desk for support on some sort of problem and they fix it and they go on. With machine learning and deep learning, the reliance on the partnership between the integrator and the manufacturer is going to become more prevalent. Things such as firmware updates and software updates to keep these systems current, cybersecurity risks, health monitoring, all those things are things that ultimately I think should really fall on the responsibility of the manufacturer. Now, all that said, what I see as a landscape is an opportunity to really add value to the solution that you're selling, because you're going to be able to implement a fairly easy conversation, a more predictive managed service offering. The customers are going to want these things working, and they're going to recognize that they are a much more complex system, and if they want them operating properly, the managed services to support this through, like in the Vaion offering, the hybrid cloud services and solutions which support the system, but then the support that goes along with that. I think hand in hand, the partnership becomes much more important.
Great. Well, thanks, Paul, for sharing that. And a couple more questions has come in, and I'll preface this a little bit. Is given new operational benefits and impacts and integration of these type of solutions and services with AI and so forth, what buyer types are now involved? Obviously over the years, the buyer type has moved into the IT decision makers. So what are some of the other buyer types involved in this, part of the sales process, if you will?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Mike. It's funny. I think we're still learning. I think customers are evolving as well. Obviously the IT side of things have always been prevalent since the conversion to IP and digital cameras, right, where we needed either a fixed IP address or a DHCP type of address. But I think more and more the security teams are, and when I say security teams, I mean the cyber teams are becoming involved. The IT teams are becoming involved. When we start talking about things like these new experiences, facilities is increasingly becoming involved and saying, hey, you know what, not just facilities from the guys that we might meet from an installation standpoint, but the folks who are responsible for, the Johnson control platform, not the one we're used to for access control, but the chillers, the building management systems, the heating control systems, the air conditioning, all of that stuff, becomes relevant. And then you also see some different types of movement, I think, at a business side, not just with the legacy retail, analytics types of examples, with people who are truly interested in, hey, if there's a way to use this to offset costs, to improve my customer service, to mitigate my risk, I'm all ears to what that is. We hear a lot from folks on the operations side in the Bay Area on these loitering applications around the security risk. Cybersecurity is now, hugely impacted by physical security, with people who will loiter around an entrance with the smokers as an example, and then just follow everyone in. They'll drop around some USB sticks, and eventually somebody will plug that into a computer to see what it is, and lo and behold, your virus is now, instituted into the domain. So there's a huge, I think, understanding now that the physical platform impacts the cyber platform and impacts the operations, not only of our building, but of the whole organization. So I don't know if there's any one answer. I think it depends on the use case, but I think it's incumbent upon us to ask. When we go out and we talk to a customer about, hey, look at this really cool presence-based smart map and the energy efficiency gains that you can get. Who's working on that from your facilities team? Sometimes they'll know, right? Oh, and by the way, do you guys have a hoteling and hot desking effort around real estate consolidation and real estate optimization? Oh, yeah, that's our real estate team. All right, well, let's get them involved in the conversation. So, yeah, I do think there are a whole other set of buyer types than just the traditional ones. And, of course, there's always procurement and those types of folks.
Yeah, and I think this is just an example of what you guys are sharing here as integrators, and it's something we talk about here at NSCA is start thinking differently of the services and the solutions that you're offering, and take what you're sharing here and using that to better serve your the end user clients, and that's what Pivot to Profit's about. That's what this webinar is all about, is kind of starting to think that way as an integrator. Last question, guys, that came in here, and this is one I actually thought of as well during your conversation or during your webinar here, is how does this play into the world of cyber and really cybersecurity for me as an integrator and my customer? Adam, do you want to take that one? Or
cut out?
Yeah, no worries. So how does AI and all the solutions that you shared here today, how does it play in the world of cybersecurity?
Yeah, sorry, my phone just cut out. So yeah, I mean, I don't have an all-encompassing answer, but I can certainly give you some context. We have a sister company, by the way, which is called Jazz Network in the cyber world, and Jazz is really implementing artificial intelligence within the insider threat matrix. And what that means is that, hey, if I could take machine learning and I can start to identify, hey, Adam Marlin is a sales guy. He's not in, our SAP system at all, but now I see he's in on Sunday. And not only is he in that system on Sunday, but he seems to be in from, a Starbucks in Poland. That just doesn't seem right. So let's start to track and trace what's happening there. And if you take that, example, which was, hopefully one where, my account and credentials were phished, to one with a more nefarious intent where somebody says, hey, you know what? I'm a disgruntled employee. I can now see, hey, Adam is starting to look at LinkedIn. He's looking at other jobs. He's made other applications, through his work domain, right? So let's track that and let's start to observe his IT behavior. And now I see he's downloading sensitive files and documents, within the office. And I can couple that now and say, hey, from an alerting standpoint, maybe we should start to track this guy. Maybe we should start to capture some of the information based on his identity and his location. Let's capture some of that video and record that within our case file so we understand contextually what this person is doing, both at a cyber level and at a physical level. And I think those types of integrations are going to become more pervasive over time, where your cyber identity and activity is going to be married, to your physical identity and activity. And that's, of course, in its infancy today, but I think that's why you see more and more customers looking at, how do I blend my CSO, my chief security officer, to include both domains, physical and virtual. I don't know if Tormod or Paul have other thoughts there.
I think you covered the main items, Alan.
Very good. Well, thank you all for Adam and Tormod and Paul and everyone at Vaion today for helping out with this webinar. This is more of a Vaion related question than a technology question, but I'm going to ask it, and then we'll close out here for the day. But how does Vaion compare to others in the marketplace? There are a lot of analytics startups and other companies coming out, and we're seeing all kinds of stuff through our feeds and so forth. So how does Vaion compare in the marketplace right now?
Tormod, you want to take that one, or you want me to take a stab?
I can say a few words, and then you can fill in, Adam, if I miss anything. I think so. In general, I guess I'd like to to talk about us more than others. But I think if I were to say a few words about what makes us unique, I think it's that we have end-to-end video security solution that has built-in and integrated analytics. So it's not the piecemeal or duct tape or add-on type solutions where you have to try to make it work with the camera, the backend VMS, and then analytics from different providers. We do it jointly in a simple and end-to-end solution for the reasons that we went through today. We think that's the only way to effectively apply AI to surveillance. You need to do it within the product to build these new and richer experiences. And then secondly, we can do this at scale and in real time. So we can do it in a way that's technically and commercially scalable to larger installations. And we allow you, and we also have built something from scratch that does all this in real time, that allows our customers to do to a more to actually move to a proactive security model. So I think those are the main things that set us apart, speaking to the solution and AI a bit more specifically. And then there are other things that we put a lot of emphasis on, like a really secure solution from a cybersecurity perspective, and a solution that's also incredibly easy to deploy and use. So those are the main things I'd call out. I don't know, Adam, if there are other unique things that we should mention.
Yeah, I think, part of the uniqueness is sitting through and watching the demo, but I think there's very few, organizations out there that are embedding this level of framework within the core software. And we have the advantage, as articulated, by the book Innovator's Dilemma, right? We don't have, a big legacy of older platforms that I somehow have to manage from a cash cow basis and create plugins to ensure that I don't lose market share. Right, we're coming to market with a next generation platform that embeds AI, that delivers different capabilities and experiences for our end users and our partners that are very difficult to achieve consistently or affordably, via the traditional plugin strategy. And I think at the end of the day, that's going to be the difference. And of course, it's incumbent upon us to demonstrate that difference, which we're happy to do to anyone who wants it.
Great. Well, thanks, Adam. Thanks, Tormod, and everyone else there at Vaion. Appreciate your time today. And so with that, if we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you after this webinar via email and to answer any questions. So thank you again for all joining us today. We invite you to sign up for our next webinar, which is next month, where we'll join Bob Labasio of Corporate Sales Coaches and Ian Pugh of Great America Finance, both NSCA Business Accelerator and Mac partners, as we look into keys to implementing an as-a-service strategy within your integration firm. So please make plans now to join us Tuesday, August 20th at 11 a.m. Central. And as a reminder, the recorded version of today's webinar will be available later today. And thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.